The rain was merciless that night, not the gentle kind that kissed your cheeks, but the kind that clawed at you, that seemed to want to wash you right off the earth. It fell in hard, slanting streaks, drumming against the cracked pavement, pooling into dark water where the streetlights didn't reach. Lila walked through it as if she were made of shadows herself. Her clothes were soaked, clinging to her like a second skin, heavy and cold. She carried one small bag, not because she was traveling light by choice, but because it was all she had left after life had stripped her bare. Her shoes squelched with each step, and her stomach ached with the hollow pain of hunger. She hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days, not properly. That gnawing hunger was constant, but worse was the numbness that had settled deep into her bones. When she reached the hill, she stopped. Looming above her was the mansion. She had seen it before, from a distance, the kind of place you imagine when someone says the word untouchable. Black iron gates stretched across the driveway, glistening with rain. Beyond them, a winding path led to a house that looked more like a palace, lit from within like a lantern against the storm. She could almost feel the heat of it from where she stood, but that warmth was for other people. People with money, people with lives untouched by nights like this. She had passed this place countless times, always looking away quickly, as though just staring at it too long would make the world remind her where she belonged. But tonight her pride was gone. She walked up to the intercom, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She pressed the button, and when a voice crackled through, she heard her own voice tremble in reply. Can I clean your mansion, for a plate of food?" There was silence. She almost turned to leave, sure she had been foolish, but then the gates began to open with a slow, heavy groan. Inside, Alexander Reed sat in his study, the storm tapping against the tall windows like impatient fingers. The glow of his desk lamp lit up the neat stacks of contracts and reports, the world of billion-dollar deals and impossible deadlines he had built for himself. He was a man who commanded boardrooms, who made decisions that rippled across entire industries, but that night, his focus was broken by a flicker on the security feed. He almost didn't look. People came to the gates often, salesmen, delivery mistakes, even people hoping for a charity handout. But something about the girl on the screen made him pause. She was drenched, shivering, and yet there was something stubborn in the way she stood there, like she had fought too long to let herself collapse now. Her eyes, there was something about them. Not just sadness. A kind of silent defiance. He pressed the button to open the gates. When the front door opened, she stood in the vast marble foyer like a ghost from another world. The chandelier overhead threw light on her worn sweater and frayed jeans, making them look even smaller and sadder against the grandeur of the room. Alexander studied her carefully. "You said you'd clean?" he asked, his voice even but curious. She nodded quickly, not meeting his gaze. "Yes. I'll clean anything. Just, please. I'm hungry." He told the staff to make her a plate. She sat in the corner of the massive kitchen table, eating slowly, almost cautiously, as if expecting the food to be snatched away. When she finished, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work without another word. She cleaned like someone who had done it all her life, precise, thorough, tireless. And then she came back the next day. And the next. Always offering to work in exchange for food, never asking for more, never staying longer than she had to. But Alexander noticed things. The way her hands sometimes shook when she thought no one was watching. The way she would pause, pressing a hand to her side when she bent too low, as though she carried old injuries. She never complained, never explained. She seemed determined to stay invisible even as she worked in plain sight. Weeks passed before the truth came out, not in a dramatic confession, but in a slip of conversation when she thought he wasn't listening. She had been living in a women's shelter after running from an abusive stepfather. She'd worked at a small cafe, but when it closed, she lost both income and a safe place to eat. She never begged. She said begging took away the last piece of herself she had left. That's why she offered work instead. Alexander's own past was a secret to most people, but he, too, had known what it meant to start with nothing. Or worse, to start in a place where nothing was ever safe. Orphaned young, shuffled through foster homes, he had clawed his way to where he was, learning to hide every vulnerability. And now here was this young woman, standing in his home, her resilience a mirror he had not expected to see. The real test came when the tabloids caught wind of her. Someone took photos of her arriving at the mansion, and soon the headlines screamed, "Mysterious young woman in CEO's life. Is she more than just the help?" Ugly rumors followed. People called the shelter, accusing her of using Alexander, of scheming for his money. The shelter's director, worried about safety, suggested she leave town. One rainy afternoon, she came to the mansion for what she intended to be the last time. She stood in the doorway, her bag on her shoulder, and said quietly, "I can't come back. I don't want to bring trouble to your door." But Alexander stepped forward, his voice sharp with something she had never heard from him before, anger. "Lila, do you really think I'm going to let a handful of gossip columnists decide your future? You've worked harder in this house than people I've paid 6 figures to. You've earned every single meal here. And if the world can't see that, it's the world's loss." Her composure broke. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from hunger, not from fear, but from the shock of being defended, truly defended, for the first time in years. He didn't just give her money. He gave her a chance. He enrolled her in a professional housekeeping and hospitality certification program, paying the fees quietly, without fanfare. She worked hard, building a resume that would stand on its own. Over months, she rebuilt her life piece by piece. When she finally landed a position at a luxury hotel, she invited Alexander to the opening night of their rooftop restaurant. The woman who greeted him there was not the trembling girl from the gates, but someone who stood tall, shoulders back, eyes bright with purpose. "Thank you," she told him. "Not for feeding me. Not for helping me find work. But for seeing me when I was invisible to everyone else." Alexander smiled faintly, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "You didn't need saving, Lila. You just needed someone to open the gate. And that's the truth about kindness. Sometimes it's not about giving someone the world. Sometimes it's about reminding them they still belong in it."